Are there bad movies? Some might think this is a silly question to ask, because all you have to do is look at a Transformers or Twilight or heck, even The Room to see that, yeah, of course there's bad movies. Bad things in any medium are guaranteed, whether it be books, video games, movies, no matter what it is, we are not always guaranteed a good product. Nothing is perfect, and you gotta take the good with the bad. So why even bring up the question in the first place? Believe it or not, this question has been going around, circling in my mind for years. Because when we say, this is good or this is bad, we don't really realize what that implies. If you say there is such thing as a good movie and there is such thing as a bad movie, then you are agreeing to absolutes. If you say that this is absolutely bad, then you are also implying that anyone who thinks it's good is wrong. Someone might counter and say, whoa, what I mean is when I say something's good and bad, I mean I think it's good or I think it's bad. It doesn't mean everyone has to feel that way. But then that brings up the question, are good and bad relative? And if good and bad are relative, does that mean that anything can really be called good or bad if it's all just up to the individual? For example, Twilight is considered by critics and many boyfriends to be a bad movie franchise. However, there were thousands, if not millions, of people who loved it. Now, if good and bad are relative to the individual, then you could technically say that Twilight is a good movie franchise because there are people who like it. But on the other hand, if you say that there is 100% such thing as a good movie and 100% such thing as a bad movie, you are also saying that those people are wrong. Whenever I get into an argument with a movie that they like and I don't, one of the things that always comes up is...
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
Yeah, and that's usually when you gotta just drop and say, okay, different opinions, different strokes for different folks, blah, 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 blah. And that's when most people just drop it and say, well, I guess it's just different opinions. But one thing that people really never take into consideration is that opinions can be wrong. A long time ago, all the world's top minds thought that the world was flat. That was their opinion. Hitler's opinion was that all Jews needed to be exterminated and that Nazis should rule the world. And some kids have the opinion that if you swear a whole lot, it'll make you seem more adult. My point is, just because somebody has an opinion on something doesn't mean they're right. And besides, saying something is good or bad is not stating an opinion. That is stating a fact. Or a fact that you believe.
Oh no, these facts and opinions look so similar.
Don't worry about it. Happens all the time.
I can say out loud, I enjoy watching League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That is an opinion of mine. And that is not false. Whether I enjoy something or not has nothing really to do whether the movie is good or bad. If I say I enjoy it, and I did, then I enjoy it. And that's my opinion on it. But if I said League of Extraordinary Gentlemen is a good movie, well, that is a fact that I just put forward that can be debated because other people might not see things the same way. And since the movie has a car chase in a city with no roads in it, yeah, it would be pretty hard to make a good case for that being a good movie. Some people might get excited when I say this and say, yes, finally, somebody who's saying how our opinions can be wrong and how you're not always right just because you say, well, it's my opinion. But one thing people don't really consider when I say this is that also means that your opinions can be wrong. And that means my opinions can be wrong. Our own thoughts and opinions on stuff can be wrong. Because there's two sides to this equation. Either you think maybe there isn't such thing as good or bad, it's just all relative to the individual, but if you do think there are good or bad, that means you have to always take into consideration that you might always be wrong. So let's take the route of, yes, there are bad movies. Well, then that you have to ask the question, well, who decides what's good and what's bad? The first guess might be, movie experts? Yeah, the people who make and craft the movies. How about them? I mean, they've been doing this for years, and so this group of the individuals who make the movies must know what it takes to make a good movie, or see a bad movie and recognize it. So their knowledge should probably be the deciding factor in this, right? No. Guess what? The Academy Awards are made up of tons of movie experts and filmmakers. And the movie that many people consider to be the greatest film of all time, Citizen Kane, didn't even win Best Picture. And that's only the tipping point. There have been tons of movies that people say either got an award they didn't deserve at the Oscars or have been ripped off by the Oscars. So if they can't even get those things right, how can we trust them with the ability to tell us what movies are good and what movies are bad? Well, I guess there is the argument that it's all up to the individuals then, you know, the audiences who flock to the theaters, you know, that's how you tell if a movie is good or bad, it's just how many people see it or not. Well, yeah, but in that case, that doesn't necessarily hold true either. These audiences are more divided than anyone. If you had a rock and you threw it into a crowd, you'd probably hit somebody with a different opinion on something than you. So you might say, okay, I see where you're going with this. It's the movie critics, right? You're just trying to make yourself feel more important? It's the movie critics. Well, no. No, it can't be critics either because, like anyone, they're also all over the place. If there was a formula to tell what movies were good and what movies were bad, then everything on Rotten Tomatoes would either be 100% or 0. So then what decides what is good or bad? Or maybe it's the second option. Maybe we should walk down the second road. Maybe it is just up to personal tastes and opinions. Maybe a movie is judged by how it affects the individual, and that's what makes it good or bad. Is a movie judged by how it makes you feel and the emotions it gives you that make it good or bad? Well, let me tell you a story. I don't like 2001: A Space Odyssey. Yeah, I deserve that, but please leave your hateful comments till after the video's over. Let me explain. I had heard for many years of 2001: A Space Odyssey was one of, if not the greatest film of all time. So I asked it for my birthday for 1 year, and I got it, and I sat down, and to be fair, I enjoyed parts of it. The sets and the camera work were amazing, the story with Hal was actually very enjoyable, but beyond that, I was just always confused and asking questions, and all I was doing while watching the film was saying, what's going on? Why are we watching apes? I thought this was a space movie. What's with the giant Pop-Tart? Why is the screen filled with these colors? What is going on? Why is he's getting older? Okay, no, that's it. I'm done. I don't get it. So for me personally, I didn't enjoy it. I was bored, and I was left asking so many questions. But that sparked the question in mind, was this movie that all these people said was a good movie, were they wrong? Or was I wrong? If what makes the movie good or bad is the personal enjoyment of it, then one of us had to be wrong. But then one day I realized something. For most movies, if you broke them down to just its basic script and its basic design, it's just like a book. I mean, it's visually like a book. It's telling the story in a different way than a book, obviously. But if you broke it down from all the visuals and just took the script, it would be like a book. But that's when I realized 2001 isn't like a book. It's not like a regular story. It is visual poetry. That's when it hit me. I hate poetry. And that's why I don't like 2001. Poetry is all about being vague and having the look, and I guess for visual poetry, it'd be having the look and the feel. Try to speak to what you're feeling rather than what you are thinking. You know, it's all speaking to the emotions and all. When there's something like this that I still don't get, I still don't understand, other people look at it as, wow, this is like a mental thing. It can mean this, or it could mean this, you know? It's like a mental exercise where they just want to discover or see what this could mean, and in what way. It's all being very vague, though. It's not telling you outright. And I don't enjoy that type of literature, and I don't really enjoy that type of movie, because I'm looking for a good story, you know? I like the story. I like to be engrossed in a good story, where 2001 is a movie where it's not about the story, it's about how it makes you feel. But this goes back to what I said earlier. Your personal enjoyment of a film does not make it good or bad. It's what your personal enjoyment of a film is what will make it watchable for you in the end, but that doesn't mean it's good or bad just because you didn't enjoy it. Not to say that you should always count out your personal enjoyment or not enjoying of a film out of the equation if you're reviewing something, because that is, if a movie's not keeping you entertained, then you gotta take that into consideration, but you gotta sometimes ask, is it not keeping you entertained because it's not enjoyable, or is it just because it's not for you? Most movies are made up of two parts: the experience and the story. Movies like 2001 focus more on the experience, what it is giving you, and therefore the story is mostly just set up to fuel the experience that you are getting throughout the world of the movie. Where, let's say, an action film, everything is enforcing the story, at least a good action film. The experiences you go into the action scenes reinforce what's going on in the main plot, and therefore everything that's building up the action is pushing forward the main story. Everything's focusing on the main story, and the action is just another way to ramp up the intensity in the main story. It's always a balancing act. If a movie is all experiences and no story, then some people might really find themselves lost in it because it's just supposed to be artistically appeasing to the mind, and there's not enough story to be engrossed in. But if a movie is all story with no experiences, it might as well just be two people talking in a room. But it's a balancing act. For some people like me, a better story will speak to them better. For some people who like 2001: A Space Odyssey and films like it, it's the experience that they go through that really speaks to them. As a critic, I have to make sure that when I judge a movie, I don't have my personal enjoyment of the film be the end-all be-all deciding factor on whether I think it's a good or bad movie. That is something to take in consideration. If a movie is boring and you really don't like it, that is something to take into consideration, but you also have to look at the other angles and to see if there's anything there for other people other than yourself. Because some movies are just not for you. However, that is a slippery slope to be on. That is like one of the go-to excuses whenever you are saying to someone, this movie that you like is awful. They'll say, well, it's just not for you. Many people who find their favorite movies under criticism will say, well, it's just not for you. They'll say, like, oh, it's a chick flick, it's just not for you. Or, oh, it's just a mindless action film, it's just not for you. And figuring out when it is an excuse and when it is true is very tough to do. So, in the end, is there a way to find out what's good and what's bad? Yes. Yes, there is. I've wrestled with this question back and forth. Like, maybe it is up more to the individual. But if it's left up to the individual, then you can't actually say anything is good or bad, because if somebody likes it, then it is good in their minds, and therefore it doesn't matter. If it's not up to the individual, it's just good in their minds. So this went back and forth in my mind. I went back and forth on this until I finally found the answer. One person cannot be the deciding factor on whether a movie or anything is good or bad. Not even a group of people, because personal opinions will always get in the way. So, what is the deciding factor? Time. The only thing that decides, in the end, is time. A bad movie might get popular for a moment, even for a while, but the only things that last the test of time are the ones that have something of worth in them. Sure, Citizen Kane didn't win Best Picture, but after time has passed, people have seen it and seen the movie's worth, and therefore realized what a mistake it was that it didn't win Best Picture. Over time, they've seen its worth and recognized what a good movie it is. You can't really blame the people who saw it back in the day, because they couldn't really recognize what type of experience they were seeing at that time. But over time, it's lasted. That's why when Star Wars came out, there were so many Star Wars rip-offs, but we don't remember any of them today, because over time, the only things that last are the truly exceptional ones. Sure, there are many bad movies that we remember, but we remember them for being bad. Time is the ultimate equalizer. You know, Twilight and Transformers, those movie series may be big now. Give it 50 years. Give it 50 years. Are people going to be buying the 50 edition Twilight box set? I doubt it. No matter how popular something bad is in the moment, that doesn't mean it's going to last the test of time. I think only the great and truly exceptional things will be remembered and looked back on with fondness. So if there's a movie that you hate, that you just can't understand why other people don't like it, but it's lasted, and it's stuck around, and it's been around for a while, that means there must be something of worth in it. Even if you can't see it, even if you don't understand it. But over time, only the truly good things will be looked back on fondly for being good. In the end, I don't decide what is good or bad. You don't decide what is good or bad. The people and the audience at large does not decide what is good or bad. In the end, time is the only thing that's really going to decide what is good and bad. And you know what? That's the way it should be. Thanks for watching. I'm LaserDude99.